thank you for coming. We're really excited about this book, and we're glad to be having a discussion about it tonight. A few housekeeping things. After the reading and the discussion, there'll be a Q&A, so if you have any questions that come to mind, keep those in there. We will call on you later. There will also be a signing downstairs in the bar area after the discussion as well, so socializing is on the table. All right, introductions. Carmen Boullosa is one of Mexico's leading novelists, poets, and playwrights. She has published over a dozen novels, 3 of which have been published by Vellum in English translation. Boullosa has received numerous awards and honors, including a Guggenheim Fellowship. Also a poet, playwright, essayist, and cultural critic, Boullosa is a distinguished lecturer at McNally Honors College of CUNY, and her books have been translated into Italian, Dutch, German, French, Portuguese, Chinese, and Russian. Other novels translated into English include Before, Heaven on Earth, and the Book of Anna. Tonight she's in conversation with Eileen Myles. Eileen Myles is a poet, novelist, and art journalist whose practice of vernacular first-person writing has made them one of the most recognized writers of their generation. Pathetic Literature, which they edited, came out this most recent fall, 2022. Their newest collection of poems, A Working Life, is out in April. So now it's out. Myles' fiction includes Chelsea Girls, which won France's, this is the hardest word and it's not even a French word, Irrecutables?
Right? Who knows? Who the hell knows? I think French people can't say it.
There's a lot of hard consonants in that don't normally occur in French. But anyway, prize for best foreign novel, Cool for You, Inferno, a poet's novel, and Afterglow. Writing on art, gathered in the volume The Importance of Being Iceland, travel essays in art. And that's another one of the list. The Importance of Being Iceland, travel essays in art. They live in New York and in Marfa, Texas. Without further ado, thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
I mean, I couldn't be happier to be. I mean, there's no one I could be happier to be with at this moment with this book. And there's a lot of reasons. One is that I'm such a fan of your writing. I mean, I discovered Carmen's writing about, 5 years ago. I mean, and we had met. There was I think there was a panel at St. Mark's Church that was about the poet who was the sidekick of Roberto Bolaño. And you were on that panel. And I did the most amazingly...
Santiago Papasquiaro.
Papasquiaro. Which is an amazing book of poetry, so good. And I did the completely unfeminist thing after the event, which was, because I was reading Bolaño at that moment, was very excited and couldn't believe that you knew him. And so I grilled you with questions, and you even generously gave me your email because I was so excited that you knew him. And I didn't even ask you if you were a writer. And so I was just like, what a nice woman that was a friend of Bolaño's. And then about 5 years later, I'm in Marfa, and there's the wonderful Marfa Book Company that has a table with all the most, every time I look at the table, I spend $100 because Tim Johnson has an incredible taste in. And I think I had just read War and Peace for the first time, and I was like, oh, the historical novel, and there was a book called The Theft of Texas, and I thought, and I saw your name, and the name seemed sort of familiar, and I read this book, which blew my mind, because I think what I think you're a master of in that book and subsequent books is of scale, because it takes on the border of Texas and the U.S. in the 19th century, and there's indigenous people and white people and Mexican people, and it's operatic, and everybody has a poem. So it's deeply lyric, and it's kind of, and it had the feeling for me of the film, the Robert Altman film.
Three Women? 3 Women?
No.
Nashville.
No. Nashville, yes.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I'll just stand here and guess.
Yeah. Nashville, because it was like, it was many voices, and it was an operatic cinematic scale of a book, and I was like, oh my God, this person's amazing. And then I went on to read Before, which was tiny and lyric and coming of age, but spooky. And then have just subsequently kept reading your books, and each one surprises me more. But this book, first of all, the cover is, before even going into the book, I think the cover is astonishing, because one of the most hideous assaults on my being is going to the bathroom in the airport, and where it's always like it's always, first of all you got to pick your gender, but second of all, if I head into the bathroom that says female, there's like a skirt, there's a big skirt and two little legs, and it just feels like this offense on my being, like why? I mean, like even since the beginning of the 20th century, women have not been wearing, slacks was a great feminist moment,
Conquest.
but-
A conquest. A conquest was a conquest where slacks.
Exactly, and just to go to the bathroom, they push you back every time, every day. So the cover of this book is so brilliant because it just is what should be on the bathroom everywhere. It's like, I just think yoni. It's just this incredible vaginal space with a button at the top. It's crazy. And I think this is, but the book is that lavish and that cartoony, and I guess I probably wanted to start with like, how and why did you write this book? How did this happen? Because you've done so many different things. Why this now?
Well, first of all, I do have to say that I am delighted to be with them. It's such a privilege. I can't believe that she read the book, she liked the book, and we are sitting here together in this bookstore that I love. So it's a gift. Thank you for the gift. Thanks McNally for the gift, and thank you for coming with us, because honestly I thought it was going to be she and me, and I was happy anyway. So you are a wonderful plus. I'm so happy some of you came. This is my 90th novel. I have written more, but I have 3 that were totally finished. I decided not to publish. One of them I even destroyed it. But let's call it the 19th, and the other ones are the undesired books. Though I had desired them a lot, and something went wrong. And I honestly, first it started just out of a curiosity. I was again at the Museum of the Templo Mayor in Mexico City, admiring again the extraordinary, enormous goddesses. One that is, there are 2 monoliths that are bigger than this place. They are shown. The museum is great. They've done like a vertical cave to look at them, and you look at those wonderful, powerful monsters that give birth and are devourers also, because that is a goddess. I mean, it's the creator of life and the door to death too. And they have very turbulent stories, very active stories, all the myths around them that survived, thanks to a generation of the first university of this continent that was founded in the 16th century, the Colegio de Santa Cruz Tlatelolco. All the students were Indians, and the goal was to teach them as if they were in the best European university, even Latin, everything. They knew theology, they knew everything, to prove that Indians did have soul and they couldn't be traded as slaves, because the Vatican, sorry, this is not in the book, I got distracted, it always happens. The Vatican was part of the business, as many were in the business of slave trading. So they did not want to trade those. They wanted to continue their trade. It was not only the African, but also the Indians from India, and there was that came from the Philippines, all that trade that was controlled by powerful Wall Streeters of the time. Though there were no banks, but it was something like that. They were so powerful that they said, let's do a university and proof. So in that university, what this generation did with the Franciscan was collect the wisdom of the pre-Hispanic ones. And that's why we know the myths as they had been before, because they are in the transition, the conquest had just happened, if we can call that conquest, had just happened, and they gathered them all. So I was watching these goddesses, one and the two that even have the original colors, because the archaeologists in Mexico have found a way to project the colors they know were there. I was in full admiration, and I said, well, and I grew up listening to Eve, that is so bland. She has no story of her own, and she doesn't even have sex, and she's unable to take a decision, and the only time she takes a decision, she ruins us all, because we were in Eden, and we were thrown into the earth. So we were all punished, and we had to work, and then women deserved nothing, no more decisions of them, no more pleasure for themselves. They were there to help the others in this painful life we had been inflicted because of her stupidity. So I was comparing the goddesses, to say so, or the mythical important figures, and I said, this nonsense makes no sense. So I went into this obsession of finding out how Eve had been. It couldn't be she was that way, and in fact she was not that way. So obviously that same day in the night I found previous versions, right in the web, of how she had been, translations of those books that had been before, one by a Ginsberg guy that is an expert on ancient mythical Jewish traditions. And then I found the Graves book, because I looked into books. I was looking for the former. There was no former. Lots of Eves, we all know them, in the arts, in the operas, in the poems, in the books. I started finding Eve everywhere. I grew up in a very Catholic family. I grew up with Eve and the saints, for me, but I grew up in that world that has its charms. And I wanted to know more, and I found Robert Graves' incredible book written with Patai. No, he has a special book with Patai, much more academic in a way, full of footnotes, a little bit less narrative, no images, or not in the edition I know I have, out of print obviously, but it can be found, and in libraries is there, on the Jewish myths. And that incredible book opened for me a universe. And I entered the library looking, e-library and real library, looking for the footnotes. I wanted to know everything. And Eve before was, as I imagined, a much more complex figure. There was not a separate Lilith and a separate Eve. She had it all. She was not divorced of her own self. She was the door of life and the door of death, as are the ancient goddesses of other cultures. So I thought, well, what am I going to do with this? I had spent several months on the obsession, and I thought, well, do I write something? I write an essay. What if I do something with some Hispano-American women or writers that I love, and I tried to give them voice, then passing the manuscript of Eve, but it didn't work. I did a try, and I knew it didn't work. And I thought, well, Eve is gone in my life. I learned a lot. I had a lot of fun. I feel more satisfied with Eve, and more disgusted at the idea that we prefer the Eden to Earth. It also explains how problematic is our cultures, the Occidental tradition with Earth, because we are trained to believe that Earth is a punishment. But Eve thinks Earth is fantastic. She knows Earth is the real thing, and Eve, the Eden was so boring. Nothing happens in the Eden. There's no time in the Eden. There's no Earth. There's no movement. There's no nature. There's no light. In reality, everything is stagnant. No time passes. No. Everything is stagnant and boring. So I said, well, that's it. And one night Eve started talking. and I was her secretary. And I listened to her continuously, even me saying, you can't write this. You can't write a book about Eve, this is too much. But I just went with her and with her version of the story, and it starts like a fantastic novel. We are first with hooves. She steals the fire from an angel. So it's also retelling many myths of the foundation of being a human from the point of view of this Eve. And she tells the story, but then her daughters, and also because I had been influenced by reading graves and reading those ancient texts and going back to the Genesis that contradicts itself frequently. So I wanted new voices inside the text, and Eve, evidently, she had daughters. The daughters had to be like she. They were not going to say, yes, my mother is right, my mother is right. They were going to contradict her and say, no, you're wrong. So their papers appear in the book, and we see the other versions. She tells her part, takes a breath, and the others immediately rush to show us their version of facts, different, which is in a way like ancient biblical texts are that have the other point of view versions, other characters appearing. And poor Adam Gutman he doesn't have the best role, also wants to say his own version. She has already explained why his version, that's the one we believe on, we know, we trade with, why he has built it is part of the novel, so the novel is built not as her voice speaking smoothly, but we have the others contradicting her. It's more an earthly book than an Edenico, a book from Eden, where everything is vertical and ordered. No. This we listen to the other voices. We listen to them coming and appearing.
I could listen to you talk forever. This is such a joy. But my mind goes two ways. One is just the visual, and which is when you talk about, like, the characters do have hoofs at a certain point, you know, and it struck me that and things seem to happen in a very animation kind of way. And dreams too. They seem to come out of text, seem to dream themselves into the next picture or the next vision. And I wondered if and I even thought about, you know, like thinking of antiquity or pre-antiquity or whatever, and cave drawings, and it's like, and this has some of that quality too, like the very act of creation seems to be imagining oneself and growing oneself and it being a picture. And I wonder what your relationship to the visual in the making of the book was. Were you looking at pictures and drawing off them, or was it part of your consumption that you had seen so many images? Or
I am quite a visual character, but it was Eve's fault in this case, because evidently the first hands we see in the cave are Eve's. Evidently the first piece of ceramics we find done is being done by Eve. So she's the first human, she's the first artist, because that's what we humans, what we are. She's the first cook. She's the first, and her body, yes, partially is because, yes, looking at ancestral representations of humans, but also I think it's something of our generation that we learned, thanks to Lévi-Strauss and many other thinkers, we learned that we really do our bodies. We really do build our bodies. Each one of us builds its own body, identity, self. The body is. We are not like poured into something that's pre-done. Our bodies, the way we relate with our bodies, is something very complex and has to do with language and has to do with our idea of the world. and that's how we build sexuality, and that's how we build a relationship with the others, and that's why we have the brains in our skin. And this is not anti-scientific, scientific, and that's what we are. But it's not a body that's given to us. It's a body that we make, discover, work with it, decide which we are, who we are. So there's always this, and I think it's something of our generation, very much that we, or for me, was coming from that world, that Catholic world I came from. I had no chance of ever having a clitoris in that world. Clitoris would never have existed for me. The erotic passion would never have existed for me. I am absolutely sure that my grandmother, whom I adored, never had that world, because it was for Liliths, it was for other kind of beings, and it was, her wedding night, she told me that story, and it haunts me. The day she married, her groom took out, who was taking out his clothes, took out his pistol and put it in the night bed. And she said, no, I can't sleep with that in the night bed. And he said, no, I can't sleep with that in my night bed. And I imagine all that came after that declaration of phallocracy and violence that implies a man in the wedding night putting his gun so that the bride looks at it.
Right.
No, clitoris doesn't exist in that world. But my mother is another generation. She was madly in love with my father, but all was like covered with a purity thing. Had to be covered with that. So it's because you build it. And they were women in the 19th century got another phase of big training, because there's been many big phases of training. You are half the population that has to be the slave of the other half of the population. You cannot have a clitoris. You cannot have a body. You cannot have your own self. You have to be a tool for others. So all that is the novel. Eve doesn't have all that I'm saying. They actually do their bodies. When they can come out of Eden, they are like Barbie and Ken.
Yeah.
But a Barbie without tits.
Yeah.
So it's like two bodies without their parts, as elegantly would be said. And she does it. She does it.
Yeah.
And he tries to do it too, because first I say he tries because he doesn't want to leave the Eden. She wants to leave the Eden, and he doesn't enjoy being on Earth. He's terrified, because the truth is that also Earth is terrifying. Life is terrifying, and she doesn't feel. She knows what fear. She feels fear sometimes, but she wants to know more. And that is part also of how she builds her own body. So that's why the hooves appeared. It appeared in my, or in her, because I was following her. They was saying, no, it is too much, No, it all came, and then I understood, after having written it, I understood why it had to go that way. It is it's not nonsense. It has a meaning. And the meaning is this, I'm saying. We build ourselves. We build mainly our body. And that is a difficult construction. And it is not a territory of evil, as I learned in school and at home. It's not a territory of evil. It's a territory of life. And it's a territory of conscience. It's a territory of intelligence. There's part of our identity. So it's a liberation, all that we know. So all that is through the imaginary, the visual imaginary, and it's like a cartoon because at the beginning they are barely three-dimensional. They become, oxygen comes inside them slowly, the oxygen of conscience, their own self. So it happens, and also we are seeing all the many generations that happened to have language, to have arts, to have, and she lives through all of them like this, because it's a novel. So we needed it like this. The privilege of a novel that marks time, the clock, it has its own clock, a novel.
I just want to say one thing, and then you have to read something. But I think the leap, just listening to you talk, and the leap that you took in the moment when you said, I only learned a few years ago that the hands in the cave paintings were clearly by a woman. The size of the hands, they had to be female hands. That was the great discovery, that the first artist was female. But you instantly said they were by Eve, which so, is such a poet and novelist gesture that it's sort of like you go beyond immediately. There was not even that in-between step where it was the generic character. It was Eve, because I think you're a bit like an actor. Like, I think that in the way that, Daniel Day-Lewis stays in character, he doesn't stop cobbling when he's off set. And I think you're in Eve, I think you're in the Eve moment.
I think I passed the Eve moment, but when I remember her, I remember what it was to be the Eve moment. But I passed it. I'm in another phase. Can you
read the seed, please? That first little. People need a taste of what we're talking about if you haven't read the book.
Taste of forbidden fruit.
Exactly.
The forbidden fruit had happened when I awakened, troubled by my dream. I need to take a walk. Adam sleeps, muttering something or other. I stir the waters of the pond to illuminate the night. I don't go near the beehive. I move as far from it as I do from Adam, keeping them both in my sight. I'm standing, contemplating the sky. I see the high walls of stone surrounding me, protecting us. I pick a small stone off the ground and throw it into the pond. The water is sprinkled with stars, so different from and so similar to the brightness in the heavens. I'm still standing. As I often do, I remove the apple seed, the one I took from the tree with the delicious fruit in Eden, which I keep in the thick hair that grows under my arm. I look at the sky once more. I brush the smooth seed against my lips and do it again. I'm still standing, looking at the sky. I don't know why. I put the seed in my mouth and swallow it with my saliva. I close my eyes. I feel the seed move silently through me, timidly at first, cautious, until the nearby sound of my heart enlivens it. Then, due to inertia more than gravity, it becomes astral, faster than anything inside a body, animated by my internal beat, spurred on by the movement of my blood and the humors of my liver. I notice the vertigo with which it moves through me. It avoids the waste execrated through my rear. The tiny thing travels all the way to the lowest part of my thorax, the place between my legs, which is like an endless passage that has only one exit for urine. But the seed doesn't take the exit. It's moving freely inside my body, and what is mine belongs to it too. I feel its impact inside me. It's moving outward. I feel it split me in two. It's almost out of my body. But then it's not. Stopped by the arc at the base of my trunk, And then it starts rising again, back the way it came, all the way to the center of my chest. I breathe deeply. The air I inhale is breathed by the seed too, and it takes flight. Next, it dives precipitously into the arc between my legs. This time, its impact is so great that its sweet point opens a new passage between my legs. Legs that stand upon earth, it seems the seed is saying, speaking to them through the passage that has just opened, be alert. My legs buckle, I squat. At the center of that new passageway, the clitoris blossoms. The vivid pleasure of the apple breaking and opening my skin. Raw flesh, sensitive, wise to the heart, intimate of blood, aware of earthly gravity, both rigid and soft. It contains both the word and the memory of the intense pleasure I felt when I bit into the fruit, as well as an awareness of myself and more, much more. I moved my hand to my clitoris. That first bite that crunched between my teeth and changed our lives had reserved for me, in that little black seed, the ultimate pleasure.
Wow.
That was great.
Come on. So crazy. I think the thing that's so awesome is that your Eve just drags you through Eve's body. You know, like there's no other way, you know? It's sort of like the way is, you know, it is here. It is in this. And also just the construction of it as a writer is just very simple, you know, as I, you know, twice, 3 times, as I stand. And then the third time you do it, it's all like, it's almost addressed as to somebody who stands. As one, you're showing us how language operates. Like, how does the third one go? Do you know what I mean?
I'm still standing, looking at the sky. I don't know why I put the seed in my mouth and swallow it with my saliva. That's the third. I am standing, I'm still standing, looking at the sky.
It's so, I mean, it's so constructed to both see human in this way, like the fact that we stand, you know, we're those creatures, and then there's an incredible sexual building that you're doing. It's amazing.
So that's the part of the seed. I'm not going to read you the part of the envy of the clitoris, because evidently Freud was wrong. It's not that envy. We all know. We know very well it's the envy of the clitoris. Excuse me, males, but it's the truth.
But you do show her making his dick.
Yes, she makes
It's sort of like, there's so many gorgeous reversals and seizings of power in here, where it's like, it becomes clay, and she's, you know, like basically kind of jerking him off and creating a penis in the same gesture. Like, she gives it to him.
Yes, she does. And the big failure of her in the book that will then, because this is the Genesis, but as it is told through Eve's, we are going to see other passages of the Genesis having other movements. So we have always heard that Abel is the victim and Cain is the assassin.
Yeah.
But we have also read that Abel was the shepherd, and Abel killed the animals, and Abel brought the dead meat to our tables, while Cain was the one that cultivated the earth. And that's the one that brought to our table the seeds. So that to me didn't really make sense when I was already working with the family. I mean, I had Eve, Adam, Cain had been born, and I was seeing the family structure, I saw Aidan not being very happy of Eve giving birth because he felt he was outside the party. They try to have babies other ways, but it doesn't work. They have to do it like the animals, and that makes the problem, creates a problem in the couple. Why does she give birth and not him? And he feels excluded and leaves the house and is furious. And she, to repair the situation, she makes it wrong because she brings him in and is just trying to ignore the situation and decides to give him Abel. Abel is going to be his son, and she's going to keep Cain.
Mm-hmm.
So Abel is raised in the rage of the father, who feels excluded of having a baby and who didn't want to be in earth. He's an Edenite. She's not an Edenite. She's from earth. But he really would prefer to be in the Eden. So the reason why the assassination happens is totally different. And it's told in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to spill the beans because I hope you read the book.
But you need to read some of the Cain
But
and
I'm
Abel
going
stuff because it's so
to
gorgeous.
read- Do we still have time?
Sure, yeah.
And you guys, I mean, we started a little late because
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
for
yeah.
you guys to ask a couple of questions if you know.
Right.
So I just read this little, the offerings of Cain, the tiller of the soil, and of Abel shepherd. You know this story. To prepare their offering, Abel slit the throat of a goat from his flock, drank a mouthful of the stream that burst forth from its neck like a fountain, and quickly covered the veins so the animal's flesh would retain the blood. He picked up a pile of entrails, meat, and abundant fat from his most recent victim. He separated the bones and set the head and skin aside, as was his custom. After flaying the body, he sprinkled it with salt and urine and hung it to dry on some poles a few feet away. He hung the skull of the goat from a string of dried intestine tied to a taller pole, where it shared the honor with other animal skulls. The clean ones observed the scene with their empty eye sockets. The ones that continued to rot were surrounded by flies and covered in white maggots, I think. The proof of his labors lay next to the pile of animals, remains Abel's offering. The knife, both sides of the blade, dripped with the animal's blood from slicing their flesh away. The offal and the blood and other bits and pieces the earth had not absorbed, and the bones torn from the flesh, ready for use, piled in a heap. Cain carefully arranged fragrant flowers, sweet herbs, and the spring of aromatic trees on a small table made from slabs of rock and round stones. He sprinkled them with shavings from the trunk of a cherry tree, which were still damp, so that when he set it afire, the smoke from all the different plants would emit their distinct aromas. Once the offerings were ready, Adam gave the order to light the fires. Abel's offering produced dense, compact smoke which rose into the sky. The scent of Cain's, a perfumed cloud, spread quickly, so quickly it looked like it was running, light and joyful, reaching almost as far as the sown fields, blessing our senses and our spirits. You could hardly tell its scented freshness apart from the pure air. Abel's greasy fire and viscous smoke rebelled and kept its distance from our surroundings, impenetrable. When the blood burned, it thickened the smoke, making us all cough and our eyes sting. Adam didn't hesitate. Coughing and clearing his throat in the Abelized smoke, he decreed, "Abel, your offering is good. It's smoke, so dense, substantial, like ink, remarkable. He stepped away from the offering and coughed deeply. He wiped the tears and snot from his face. I congratulate you, Abel. Your sacrifice has weight and substance. You can be sure that he, the Divine One, is well pleased. Abel, there's no doubt that he accepts your sacrifice. You have understood his desire for oblation and what his divine being requires. But yours, Cain, you must be fooling. Are you not ashamed? All you offered on your fire was grass, nothing living, nothing that remotely would please the one who you have no right to name. Have you no respect? He despises your offering. He rejects it. You have not fed your fire with spirit, nor have you offered anything that lows, barks, roars, moves, flies, nothing that doesn't have roots. You offered silence, and he responds with silence. No, Cain. You have made no sacrifice. You haven't given anything up. Yours is sheer hypocrisy. That's why your offering, Cain, doesn't rise to the celestial abode. That's why it has been rejected. Abel began to laugh, swollen with pride and self-satisfaction. Yes, I'm laughing at you. You can get your smoke to rise or anything else. You can't make your smoke to rise or anything else. You have a pitiful penis. It's pathetic. Even if Ada sucked you, Ada is a sister, she couldn't fuck you. Ada will suck me and fuck me. Cain went wild. Shut up! Shut up! Don't say her name! Adam provoked him further. She'll suck mine! Ada will suck me! Abel pushed Cain, taking him by surprise, and he fell. Abel and Adam pointed at him on the ground and continued mocking him. You only do women's work! Girly Cain, the seed flower! Your penis is girly! Your penis is a coquette! You've got a girly coquette! Rising from the earth in fury, Cain threatened Abel with his right fist. Shut your mouth or I'll get you with this! Go ahead, fuck me if you can! I'm not Ada! Cain didn't reply. He turned his back as Abel continued taunting him. Exactly like Ada! You really are a girl! He grabbed the skull, which had dried in the sun, holding it tightly by the jaw, and shook it at Abel, who said, I ate your Ada's cunt! Hear that? Cunt, cunt! Cain raised his arm, jumped, and struck a blow at Abel with the jawbone. It knocked him to the ground, breaking his neck.
Silence. So great. Does anybody have any questions?
How do we follow that?
Oh. You mentioned that you found Eve's voice, or Eve's voice came to you one night. Did you have drafts of the book that weren't from her perspective or her voice before that? Or was it always...
Till she spoke, I hadn't written a line of hers.
Wow.
When she spoke, I started writing the book, and she kept talking. So most of the book, this little passage I now read didn't, but most of the book is told by her. And then we have the other versions. And then we have this little scene and other scenes. It's not like all the same voice, but the voice that controls, in reality, the soul of the book is Eve, is her book, in the translation of Samantha Schnee, who did it in English. I wrote it in Spanish, that I prefer, by the way, as a language. Not like Borges that always said, oh, in reality I was born by mistake speaking Spanish. I prefer English. No, I prefer Spanish. When I was 11 years old and I read Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights with Mother Michelle, who was fantastic, by the way. I complain about the nose, but not too much. She was great. I said, oh, why wasn't I born in English? I wanted everything in English. I thought it was so great, and also it was different from what was spoken at home. They spoke Spanish. They talked about who couldn't read but histories of saints and those things, and there was Emily Bronte speaking in English. So I wanted to, but no, now that I am sensible, I honestly prefer Spanish.
I'm glad to hear. I only just recently read that thing about Borges explaining why English was a better language. I was shocked, you know.
Well, it was, he learned this as a kid, and he had this Hispanophobic attitude of Argentinians. So it's very complicated. I adore Borges, even when he says that, and he makes me remember myself at 11. And Emily Bronte was never a bad thing to remember. But he's a very peculiar character. He never had a body, you know.
Right.
One of his partners said that he had made love only once in his life and he had found it repugnant. And he used to tell Bioy Casares, who was my friend, he told him, I don't understand why Adolfito, he called him in diminutive, I don't know why Adolfito, you spend so many afternoons doing that gymnastic exercise that I find so repugnant. And he made love. He had girlfriends and loved making love. And Borges thought it was something repugnant. That's why he didn't like Spanish.
Wow. Very good. That's really great. There were some other questions here.
My question was about Eve also. I actually probably said most of what I wanted to ask about was how it morphed from you listening to her voice, and then, when you helped her and when you intervened, at what point did you shape the narrative yourself?
No, me not. Really, I write my novels in a state of possession.
Oh.
I do like my plans before writing.
Sure.
But I.
Could you repeat that last sentence? You do like
But
what?
I do my plans.
Plans.
Plans,
Okay.
my maps and my plans, many times very visual.
So you absorb them unconsciously in a way.
No, it's not absorbed, and it's like what's going to go here, and then I read a lot, and then when I get the tone, it's the tone of the novel. And here the tone of the novel was Eve's. I have a friend that tells me, why do you always write the same book? And I feel so offended. So offended. I work so much to try to do my books different. I believe every book has to be its own self, because I think that a novel, a piece of fiction, a poem, they have their own body, but they do have a difference. And the difference is it's like a body, the literary text is like a body, but it has the skin inside. Because he says I always write the same, and I am always with my same obsessions, and I kind of infuriate, because I've written a novel where Cervantes was the character, I wrote a novel on Cleopatra, I wrote everything, and I look for different landscapes, to say so, because I love to explore them, and it's for me a way of living and discovering and understanding. While I'm discovering the novel, depending on the book, I do my maps. The last novel, the novel I'm working on, that is a very difficult horse to ride or to be eaten by doesn't want to eat. We are having this thing, I've been battling with it since I finished Eve. I have done so much images that I have I think by now must be 19, maybe more notebooks. I haven't counted them. I have my little tables where I put the notebooks. Now they are piled like this. And they are mostly images. I mean, I have phrases, notes, ideas, and the images where I'm going to go. But with Eve, I didn't. Peculiarly, I saw a lot of images, but I didn't. And when I knew, I said, I'm going to follow the Genesis. And even when the Genesis contradicts itself, tells this version and there's the other, I don't care. I'm going to do the same. So this version and then this other version. And I was just following the text. I mean, the original Genesis. I just was very respectful, following what it said in Eve's version. That is very different. But I was following it in order with her influx. And that's why I say that the literary text has the skin inside. Because the skin is where we perceive, where we relate with the world, where we feel if it's cold or not, and if it's wind, not wind, all what is the skin. But the literary text has it as its inner bone. And that skin of the literary text also feels like the skin. And I think this novel would not have happened if it wasn't because of what has happened with the many feminisms that are now occupying the world. When I was a teen, my wonderful friends that are my friends still now that were a bit older than me were the happy few feminists of Mexico. And they do their demonstration and their plans and their tricks to call attention, and there were 6, 8, 10, 12, 16 us. We were like nobodies, few, las locas, nothing, that little group. And now it's all these masses of different feminisms, and when the big yearly march of women happens, it's all this. I mean, I feel like so excited, and I'm just one of so many, and in the other case was like, you could count the bodies. It was something so an elite few, and now it's all this, and that's the skin of this book. It's not that I said, oh, I have to write a book about this. No. It's the skin of the book. It's in the skin of it, which is in the center. And that's what is so incredible of any literary text. You read a novel of the 19th century or the 17th century of this place of the world and the other, and you know the world where they belong. You enter it, you are with the characters, you are with a fictional world, but the skin is still feeling its time, its atmosphere. And that is so incredible of literature. Incredible. It has history, economy, sociology, music, visual arts. It has it all. A real literary text has it all. If it's really written, it has it all. And this one has the girls, all those new generations that look at us and they fight with all my friends, those feminists of those times, like saying, oh, you so elitists, oh, you this and the other, complaining about it. It's wonderful, complain, that's the trick. Complain is now this, is forever, that's the skin of the moment. So that's why I think the novel was born.
Thank you. Wow.
So great. Are we there? I think
Yeah.
perhaps. Thank you so
Can I
much.
ask are we done? Or?
One more, sure.
Yes, please.
I'm curious if this channeling of a figure is common to your writing, and if that's happened in other books, or if what happened with Eve felt particular to you.
No, I think it has happened to several books. My earliest ones, like Before, that luckily you read because I think it's my favorite sometimes. Today is my favorite.
The Texas one?
No, the
Before?
Before.
Oh, Before is a gem.
Well,
Yeah.
Texas is is a thing, 367 characters.
Yeah.
And I was the master of orchestra of them. And all the novels, they have to have the sound, you know. So how do you have all them building the tune? Because the case of Texas is apart. It's the tune of all this. And it's the tune of the praderia, the land, the cow land, all that world you have to listen to. But I did take out one character that I loved, which was the one that hammers the kind of shoes of the horses. What's the name of that guy?
Horseshoe.
But yes, but who is the one that puts them,
Farrier?
figures them? A blacksmith, but the blacksmith that's special.
The farrier.
Sorry?
Farrier.
Farrier.
The farrier. So I had the farrier, but he was damn noisy. So I had to take him out because every time he appeared, it was like all the scenes got really disturbed.
That's really
But I have let's say, sound-wise, the musician and the guy who uses his gun at the same time. So what happens with that? So it's all, but in that case, the main character that made me be there was that imaginary Texas of the 19th century, not from my imagination, but from the Mexican imagination after our independence. But Texas meant to Mexico. And it meant a space of conquest, it meant a space of rival, it meant many things for this country of so many cultural mixes. And we had our cowboy was a kind of heroic character, and our imagination about it, and how we convoke the foreigners to come in and be part of that adventure of us, the conquerors, the Caspanians, evidently, that's all that, and they appear in the book. But it was that land that kind of, I got into it. And obviously I was the orchestra manager, and that orchestra was difficult. In the case of Eve, my hand was light because I had Eve, which happens to be muy mandona, you say in Spanish, in English would be somebody that all the time is giving orders. So she let me do less because she was giving orders. And the voices of the daughters that came in and following the Genesis, in many ways it was much easier because it was like less writing a difficult or following difficult voices or difficult. I worked too much before, but the writing was kind of smooth. And then I cleaned a lot. I always clean a lot as much as I can. But it was kind of. And yes, I do, and there are many writers I admire how I see how they write in a state of possession. I see that state of possession. And I only write that way, except when I give lectures, then I have to sit on it. And I prefer the others. I really, I'm very difficult to live with. Ask my poor
Thank you so much for this conversation.